Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of TU Trauma Uncensored. Today we have a guest, and you're going to hear the intro here in a second, but I want to let you guys know, first of all, content disclaimer, and it says this on the notes, but if you don't know, we talk about loss and grief on this, so if you're sensitive to that, maybe approach with caution. In this episode, we do talk about child loss because it is Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month, and our guest today shares her story experiencing that loss. But I'm pretty sure you're going to really get a lot of this episode. There are so many important lessons to be learned about grief and about trauma on here. If this is your first episode, thank you for being here. Enjoy.
Trauma Uncensored.
Trauma Uncensored.
Trauma Uncensored.
Welcome everyone to another episode of Trauma Uncensored. My name is Andres Gamboa. This is Brooke Shearer, and today we have another special guest. We have noticed that the episodes where we have guests have been trending really well, and so we have been searching far and wide. Actually, really, thanks, Mel, for introducing us to some wonderful human beings who have been able to share their story on the show. Today is no different. Lindsay Hernandez is here with us today, and I don't know if you guys have gone back and listened to Michelle's episode or Melanie's episode, but generally speaking, when we have company, we don't do that much digging into their past so that the reactions are genuine when we talk to people as they're sharing their story. So Lindsay, I did get probably more than anybody else's story a little bit beforehand, but I know for a fact this one, another one where you're going to want to take notes next to a box of tissues. If you don't know what this podcast is about and you're going, what the heck is this guy even saying? Brooke Shearer here, who
Hello.
is the main story of this show, has been inspiring people with her story. And you guys, if you want the full details, you got to go back to The Crash. It's the first episode that we aired. Just scroll down all the way to the bottom, or in your toggle settings on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, you can go from oldest to newest. Hit that, and you're gonna get the full details. But Brooke's son was killed in a car crash about just 10 years. Oh my God, 9 years ago.
9 years ago.
September 15, 2016.
That's correct.
And it was a car crash, not a car accident. The person who was driving the other car was doing all sorts of things on their mobile device while they were driving 80 miles an hour, and decided that was more important than paying attention to the road. Again, if you want the full details of that episode, we go into it pretty heavily, so make sure you go back and listen to that. But what this show is about, the Trauma Uncensored podcast, is we talk about grief, we talk about loss, we talk about all of these different emotions, different phases, different experiences that people have after going through severe loss and or severe trauma. So we are not therapists. Brooke and I are not therapists. Lindsay, are you a therapist?
No.
Okay. So disclaimer on that. This isn't like, although Brooke,
I have my PhD in life.
Exactly. So we do
I have
share.
my PhD in life.
That's exactly right. So you might not get those fancy words, even though Brooke knows them all because she's.
I don't know. No. Don't set that up. I do not know them all. Listen, as I go through and listen to myself in some of these episodes, I'm like, I wonder what my actual licensed people are thinking right now. Did I use the correct terminology?
Okay.
But people at least get the gist.
Fair enough.
I think I'm pretty spot on, but
Yeah.
I am not licensed. And
Fair enough.
So
now, that's not to say there are some amazing shows about trauma out there if you want to learn it from a more education, like a science-based psychology breakdown. And those are fantastic shows for you to understand what it's like and what trauma can be. This is more we went through it, and that's why we're talking to people about it, and it helps others be inspired. At least I've been inspired by Brooke's story and how she has grown and changed and moved through life after carrying such a heavy burden. And I'm sure I know for a fact, based on what I know about Lindsay's story, that this is going to be another one of those super inspiring ones. So thank you for being here, Lindsay.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Thank you for having me, you guys. I'm inspired by everything that I've learned. Brooke, your story is just, your bravery is incredible, and I'm just happy to share this space with you today.
Thank you very much.
Wow, that's really nice. Thank you.
I know. I'm very grateful that you reached out. I did a little bit of background stuff too, and I have a feeling. See, I don't have my tissues next to me. In fact, I'm out of tissues in my office. This could be a bad thing. So if I start wiping my face for people,
so good. Just grab the shirt.
Yeah, there you
you
go.
have sleeves, you have neck collars. You're gonna be good. I will send you some from all the way from Oregon.
Okay. Well, can you have Bree send me a coffee as well? Although I am drinking. Do you like my Halloween
I do like it.
cup? Isn't that fun?
It's very nice.
I love local artists, and ceramics is a big thing for me. So
Lovely.
I love it.
You're lovely.
'Tis the season.
I already got my coffee, so she won't be coming in this time, unfortunately for you.
All right. Well, that's fine.
Lindsay, you said you heard some of the episodes. My wife often comes in mid-episode and goes, "Here you go," and she gives me the coffee.
Oh, nice.
And Brooke's like, "Can you send
Brooke
Bree over
gets
here?"
jealous. Yeah, because Brooke wants coffee
Nice.
too.
So,
Coffee delivery.
all right, I gotta be honest with you. I'm a little nervous with this one because it touches near and dear to my heart, as you already know, Lindsay. So we'll dig in. By the way, if you guys like the show, make sure you subscribe to all the things. We're on all the socials. That's my only little bit about that. Go find us, Trauma Uncensored. You got it. Now, let's dig into this. Can you just, usually people have just kind of started with a 30,000 foot view, and we kind of dig in as we're going along, kind of like discuss with some questions here and there. But let's just start with that and then just see where this whole thing takes us.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I should preface all of this by saying October is super heavy for anybody who has experienced pregnancy loss or child loss. Infant Awareness Month is kind of in your face. And it's always one of those things where, for me, I heard the statistic, right? 1 in 4 women have experienced something like that. And that was so far away from anything that I could even fathom. I just always felt for them until it all became my turn. So in 2013, I gave birth to my first son. His name is Bowen. He's in 7th grade now. He came at 34 weeks, so he was really early. And with that came a lot of delivery trauma that left us unable to conceive again. We had a lot of fertility treatment, a lot of surgeries to kind of repair damage, that sort of thing. And they just said, listen, you're in the 1% chance to really conceive again. So we marched our way through the adoption process. We had just tiptoed through the home study, and lo and behold, we got pregnant. Naturally, couldn't believe it. Pulled the plug on the adoption thing, and off we ran with this miracle baby that we never expected to be able to have. We have this kind of thing, my husband and I, where we never find out the sex of the baby. We just call it Jelly Bean the whole time. So we were really excited to just be pregnant, have the opportunity. And we were told from the beginning, just be cautiously optimistic, right? Like most couples who are expecting, you be cautiously optimistic. I had, been in and out of appointments, and because I'd had a premature delivery before, I was monitored a little more closely, but nothing in the way that was so terribly alarming. Like, things were progressing as they should until kind of, they said you're holding a little too much fluid, which was starting some contractions. So they said, we're going to monitor you every other day or so, because we're going to give you some medication that's going to ward off those contractions and allow that baby to grow. So they said, if you can get past 32 weeks, that's our goal. So I was like, all right, I got this. Like, I can do anything. So we hit 32 weeks. And I was in the doctor's office checking on the fetal heartbeat, because the medication that they were giving me could impact the fetal health, or the heartbeat. And at that time, that's when we would stop the medication, and the contractions would go on, and then we would deliver. So I made it to 34 weeks again, went in for that appointment. They said, yeah, we're noticing some blood flow issues with the heart. We're going to stop the medicine. I told my husband, I said, let's pack a bag, buddy, because it's time, it's going to happen any day. And we did not have our bag packed the first time. That was a whole thing. We were like all the movies that you see where nobody's prepared. So came off the meds. I had made it to 34 weeks when they had only hoped for me to make it to 32. I was home free. And I will tell you, we had just purchased the crib like the week before. I finally found the courage enough to kind of go and do that and really commit to the fact that this was actually happening. My water broke, went in. It was, by all means, uneventful. And then they said, you've been kind of laboring too long. Let's consider a C-section. We don't want to put any more stress on the baby. Let's do it, right? Like, however we can get this jelly bean into my arm safe and sound so we can go home. That's what I want. So this is where it all went sideways. I mean, I still I remember this almost in an out of body way. I cannot believe, and Brooke, I know you know what this feels like. I cannot believe that was my life. I cannot believe that I experienced what I was about to experience in that moment. So went in, had the C-section, and the air in the room was just sucked out. It was, I don't know how to explain it. We knew that NICU would be on standby simply because the baby was going to be premature. But I didn't understand the emergency vibe that was happening. My OB, after he performed the C-section, passed the baby over to NICU, who was, what I understood was going to be just monitoring and doing a quick check, and we were going to be on our way. And he came around the drape and said, "Tell me what you need. Tell me what you need." And I'm like, I don't know what I need. I don't know what you're saying. Because at that point, I didn't even know if it was a boy or a girl. We didn't know what we had. So my husband and I are just sitting on the other side of the drape, and we're just very confused. It had been many, many hours. At that point, I was very heavily medicated. He was exhausted. We're kind of just like, we did all the things, we took the meds, we went to the appointments, we got past the gestational goal. I don't understand. And I could hear, and to this day, she's a hero. She will always be our hero. Our NICU doctor kind of up in the corner, because I'm, obviously laying flat. She was over my shoulder. And she was calling for x-ray, and she started to call for more people into the room. That was not discussed. I didn't understand any of that. And I said, what's happening? The nurse who was attending to me went and got a rosary and put it in my hands and said, do you want him baptized? And I said, it's a him. And she said, yes, you have a little boy. Do you want him to be baptized? And I said, yes, but we'll do all of that. I don't understand. And so she looked over her shoulder at Dr. Ferry is her name. And she came over, masked. All I could see were her bright blue eyes. And she looked into my soul and said, we're doing everything we can. And went back to attend to what we now know is our son. My husband could see very clearly because I'm just facing the ceiling. So he was able to see what was going on. And when I tell you the guttural cry that came from the depth of his soul, I didn't need any more explaining. Like, that is how I understood that my son was dying in that moment. And I had never been around anyone who passed in front of me before. I would never like surround a grandparent who was passing or something like that. I'd never experienced any of this. So they brought him over and they said, he's still alive. We're going to let him pass away in your arms. And so I held him, and he just got bluer and bluer and bluer. And I, try to talk to people about how that felt, because the only way I could describe it, and I'll tell you, it took me some time to come out of that fog. But when I tried to find the words to make it relatable for other parents, it's like if you were duct taped to a chair, right? And then someone takes your newborn and tosses them in a pool in front of you, and they just suffocate and you cannot move. Like, yes, I lost my son. Yes, he died in my arms. But I was also paralyzed in the moment and unable to do the thing that moms are supposed to do, right? So my brain is telling me, save your child. And I was paralyzed from the waist down. I barely had the strength to hold him in my arms. And that is something that will haunt me forever. I know realistically there was nothing I could have done, but the fact that I just couldn't even try, so it was, the anesthesiologist was vomiting over my shoulder. I mean, she's at my head throwing up, and there was just wailing. I mean, I know these medical professionals have been in this circumstance before. There was just something about that night. I don't know if it's because of the relationship that we had built over the months, and I just don't know. It was so unbelievably horrible. And so they take us to recovery, and he's on my chest, and they let me have him as long as, we wanted him. And they brought in our family, and I remember screaming, I'm so sad. I'm so sad. And I just kept repeating that. And it was just because I didn't know what else to say, and I just kept saying, I'm so sad. And, they called time of death. And that was very, like, I had only ever seen that on TV. It was just so surreal. And still talking about it, I can't believe that was my life. I cannot believe that happened. And, we were kind of discussing this before, but I didn't realize in the moment all the ways in which care for a bereaved family is different, because I had a son in the same hospital, and you go up to your postpartum room, and I learned that in this case, you go to the end of the hall. They have a special room that has, a little symbol on it, and that's to denote that there's a bereaved family in there, and just kind of all those things. But I will tell you, I was met with so much love and so much compassion. There's a nurse, her name is Tammy. She cared for me. She was in the room when we rolled in. She will forever be part of our lives and our story. She, was so sweet, and they let us have him as much as we wanted, which was always because, and this was the crazy part, I knew that he was no longer living, but my heart and my brain weren't reconciling that. And biologically, I'm still a new mom. I just grew a human. I just gave birth. So all those things that are supposed to happen are happening. I'll never forget, it was early morning, 4 a.m., and my milk came in, and it was like agony. It was like another level of hell, like that my body didn't get it. And it's like, really, so I just was like, my body was biologically made to nurture this child that was no longer here, and it didn't get the memo. And I was left with that. They were so kind to us, and they let us have him as much as possible. I tell people I didn't even realize this because I was so traumatized at the time, but they would come back and say, we're going to let you rest. We're going to let you rest. We're going to take him for a little while. And they put him in the, the little bassinet on wheels that they bring the babies in. And I remember now watching them cover him before they left the room so that he didn't offend anybody else in the hallway. And what I didn't realize is they weren't letting me rest. They were taking him to the cooler.
Yeah.
So that his body wouldn't, and they have those cuddle cots now and the cooling cots where you can keep your baby with you. I didn't have that. But they did it with so much grace and so much love, and they knew I didn't know. And so they were trying to just make it as caring as possible. But it was, I can't even describe it. The day that they released us, my husband and goes and brings the car around, and the whole setup is in the back seat still.
Yeah.
In
The car seat.
the car seat and the base and the whole thing, all of it, the bag, the whole thing. And so it was just like one thing after another. It was just like hit after hit. But I will tell you, there is nothing that feels like when you walk out the door, because that's it. It's final. Like, you're never going to see him again. You're never going to see him again. It's not like maybe I'll run into you down the road. And I'm a faithful person, so I believe that there will, have a future together in heaven. But it was, again, biologically, you're not supposed to walk in the opposite direction of your child.
Yeah.
And so we left, and, then kind of the madness started, because we didn't really understand what happened. How did we get here? There was nothing on ultrasound. Other than the few hiccups that we had seen along the way, the extra fluid and, the contractions, but what happened? And so we ordered an autopsy, and our doctors were so wonderful. And my maternal fetal medicine doctor, his name is Dr. Coulter. I love him. Again, he'll forever be part of our family, but gave us the advice to maybe pursue some investigation, because if we had ever decided to have a child again, which we couldn't even fathom in that moment, but maybe we would want some testing to figure out what in the world happened.
And just to jump in real quick, when was the last ultrasound, or when was the last, moment that you had heard, your baby's heartbeat on monitor, or whatever, saw the rhythms and everything? How soon before you went into labor had, and were the machines while you were, in labor in the beginning, were they still beeping, and everything was still showing,
everything was perfect,
vital signs?
Yep. So I had come off the medicine at my last maternal fetal medicine doctor's appointment, the high risk, you call them the high risk.
Mm-hmm.
So I had come off that medicine, and I told my husband it's going to be any day. So it was the next morning. I called my OB. I said, contractions are revving up. I think we're getting started. They said, come in. Absolutely. Contractions were every bit of what I thought they were. And they sent me right to labor and delivery. And the whole time, we're locked and loaded. We have the band on the belly, and everything is great. Everything is as it should be, until I just labored too long, and they thought it was just too much for him.
When was this, the date wise?
Yeah. So his birthday is February 25th, 2016.
Okay. So
So I talk a lot about my February 24th self, where, for anybody that's gone through any kind of trauma or life altering experience, there's the before you and then the after you.
Yeah.
And all the things that I thought mattered don't matter. I mean, I walked into that hospital one person and I walked out a totally different
Yeah.
human being for all time.
Well, wow. First of all, I'm so sorry that happened.
Thank you.
And I know it's been 9 years, but it doesn't, as we've learned through these episodes, does not go away. You just keep growing as a person, and then that new person that you become finds a way to be able to have the strength to even just tell the story the way you've told it. So yeah, so sorry that all of that happened.
Thank you.
You were talking about the autopsy and what you found out. So could you continue? Like I know, but I think this is.
Well, and I don't.
Yeah,
So
I think
I'm
Brooke.
like,
This is going to be an interesting.
Well, and you know what? Why it's so powerful for me to be able to sit as other people are telling their stories is because, like, we don't share the same story, but I understand so much of what you're saying, the before and the after, and and as we continue to talk, I'm sure this will come out, but in the aftermath of our tragedy, the feelings of being so alone and I'm the only person out there in the situation, and not having a community to help relate to was so paralyzing, really.
Yeah.
I mean, it did not, feeling that alone is not conducive to any sort of healing whatsoever. And I am grateful for you for allowing me to share the space as you speak about this, because there's trauma that's stirred up for me, but it's also it's a healing. I mean, that's why we do this, right, Andreas? It's not just gonna, help me to feel connection and that I'm not alone, but there are going to be many others out there who are going to resonate with your story. It's not it's not an easy thing, and I'm so sorry for your loss.
Thank you. I appreciate it so much, and it is hard to share the story over and over, but I left feeling so obviously empty-handed, right? I did not have my child in my arms, but again, my brain and my heart weren't able to reconcile that I couldn't be his mother. And I told my husband, I will be his mother in some way. I will find a way. And so we started our nonprofit in his name, Christian Michael Hernandez Foundation. We do all sorts of things to help other bereaved families. We work with hospitals. We work with bereavement groups. We help. I mean, we serve in our community, and I won't ever be able to bathe him. I won't ever be able to give him a birthday party, but I'm his mom today. I can be his mom right now, because if that means sharing our story can help one other person or inspire them to put one foot in front of the other, that's what I'm going to do. Absolutely. And as long as I live, I will do it, just like you're doing it.
Right. Well, and it's also too allowing people to understand the vernacular is not a was. You weren't his mother. You are his mother. He is your child. He is here. He does exist. It's keeping everything, just because they were, born and died a short while later, or they lived 9 years and they died. It wasn't a was, Jordan is actually very, very good about correcting people. If they'll be like, what was he like? Well, no, he is like, or, how old, would he be? No, he is, 18. And I think that is a very, very strong point that you make, because a lot of people will use that past tense or be like, oh, well, you were his. No, I am his mother. I am still his mother. I will always be his mother. Always.
Absolutely.
So before you continue, really quick, for anybody who wants to learn more about the Christian Michael Hernandez Foundation, I have there's the link below on your show notes. Whenever you popped into this episode, you can scroll down on like the show page, and you can click on the link. It'll direct you to the website. I tagged it on there, so just so you know. But anyway,
thank you.
Sorry to interrupt. I'm trying
No.
to like not cry through this because
It's
It's okay. It's okay to cry.
You
It's okay to
can.
cry.
Yeah. Yep.
I
Weren't we
know
talking
what
this
you went
about this
through for
before?
some part. We talked about this.
Yeah, about Brooke
And-
doesn't like to cry, and she's listening to last week's episode. And she's like, "Can we just cut out all the parts where I was crying?" No, it's okay to cry. Cry.
Okay. So the
Yeah.
autopsy.
Yeah. So that was a little crazy because I think that was our first sign that when your child is deceased, it shouldn't be, but you may not get the same care that you otherwise would have. And I'll tell you this. So we had ordered the autopsy and we had explained to the hospital that we didn't want him released to the funeral home until that was concluded. So we knew the morning the autopsy was supposed to have taken place. So I called the hospital. And it felt very discombobulated. So I ended up getting a charge nurse on the phone who admitted to me that our son was in the back of a car headed to be cremated, that they messed up and sent his body away before getting any answers. To me, that felt, well, one, I felt like I was racing against the clock to ever be able to have an answer. I could not survive with the unknown. I needed to know, even if that meant that the knowledge was going to be painful, I had to have some sort of closure. So this woman took it upon herself to contact the funeral home director, and it was not their fault whatsoever. He was released mistakenly. They turned around and came back. And I just thought, like, if this was somebody's living child, they might handle their person with a little more care. You know, this is my child. He's still my child. It's his body. He's on the interstate back and forth. Nobody seems to know what's going on. So he came back to the hospital. They did the autopsy. They found that he had a condition called VATER syndrome, which each letter stands for a different medical anomaly. But children go on to live with that. They might have some medical complications, and the extent to which can vary based on individual. But ultimately, what caused our son to die in that hour was his trachea did not connect to his lungs. So in the NICU, when they were trying to intubate, it webbed off, as I'm told, on the bottom, so they couldn't get past it, and that's why X-ray was called in and to see if there was another way. And so he suffocated to death. And going back to what I was trying to say about being paralyzed, duct taped to a chair and watching your child suffocate in front of your face, that is exactly what happened to me on that day. And the NICU doctor, Dr. Ferry, when we had his funeral, I never saw her face. So a few weeks later, we had a celebration of life to honor him. And we had kind of a receiving line where we were hugging some folks who came to love on us that day. And again, I had only ever seen her eyes when she stood over me, and she came through the line, and I knew immediately who she was by her eyes. And I fell into her because I felt so alone, but she was in it with me. And it was in that moment that I knew, obviously, because I had the autopsy results at this point, I knew there was nothing that could be done for him. So that moment in the OR, when she came and stood over me and said, "We're doing everything we can," that was a gift. She already knew there was nothing more that could be done. She didn't want me to live a life without seeing her face and feeling like they were going extra. You know what I mean? She wanted me to have a memory of knowing that they would not give up. And that was the gift that she gave me. And it was, I mean, there was nothing we could have done about what we had to endure, but there was no mistake with the players that day. You know, the people that were there for us, we were so blessed by that. So he ended up not being able to receive air. And he died in my arms. I had him. And
were they aware of that in the delivery room? I mean, did they know that it wasn't connected because they were trying to?
Yes. So after he was born by C-section, they took him over and he wasn't breathing. There was all the things, right? That you don't hear a cry. The silence was deafening.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when they were trying to get him air and it wasn't going anywhere.
So so in theory, they knew what had happened, right? So did it require then an autopsy for that to come to light? Or, I mean, could they not tell you, or could they not, say something to that nature? Because it sounds like they knew.
Yeah. So they did. So they were able to tell us like what, but there were other, complications associated with this VATER syndrome that they wanted the full array. Yeah.
Yeah. So VATER's, like my daughter has VATER syndrome, or had. Yeah, she did, but hers was through a TEF instead of what yours. Like the syndrome is basically anytime that the esophagus and trachea aren't normal, for lack of a better
I've never
word.
met a single person ever.
So like any time that, so hers was like the same thing, but at the other pipe. Her pipe from her, like the windpipe, the trachea, which goes to your lungs, was developed, but her esophagus webbed off from the top down. So so VATER is what does it stand for? I know this because we had to like talk about this. It's
so V is vascular, A is
VATER, right? A is anus, then T is tracheal, E is esophageal, and then R is renal, kidneys, I think. Anyway, long story short is when it's when your plumbing is wrong, I guess, to put it in a lighter way. But hers specifically was a tracheoesophageal fistula, esophageal atresia. So long story short, her esophagus was the problem, not the trachea. When it's the trachea, what happens to Christian is what happens, and when it's the esophagus, what happened to Rio. Just the wrong pipe. But what happened with her is she, without medical intervention, would not have been able to eat, and then she would have passed. So luckily, on our end, we were able to do surgery. So literally everything you're describing up until the point where they give him to you because he couldn't breathe, I know exactly what you're talking about. Very much so.
I'm so sorry. Yeah.
It's rough.
Very.
And we didn't know either. They don't know. They're supposed to catch that on ultrasounds beforehand. So I think what Brooke was asking is, did you know that, like, when we were in the NICU, at one point one of the nurses, we brought up how crazy the birth story was because we didn't know what was happening. We told her a similar story to what we just shared, and the nurses were shocked because they were like, "Oh, you didn't know that she was going to be born with this?" And I go, "No." Goes, "Oh, normally whenever we have TEF babies in the NICU, like we make a space because we know it's happening because they see it on an ultrasound."
Yeah.
And
Well, and that was the part that was, yeah. And for us, we knew, so I was carrying a lot of fluid, which they refer to as polyhydramnios. And so I was just huge. I mean, I think at the time I delivered the size of triplets with one little 4-pound fella in there. But it's because he wasn't taking in the fluid either. So it's supposed to recycle, but they didn't know that. And so I just, you can really go down a rabbit hole with all the ways in which you wonder what was missed. And there was no changing our outcome. The only time I really had to kind of put myself in check was about 5 years after he passed. I was at an event, and it was another foundation event, and they were fetal research kind of is the focus there. And so they had some medical professionals, and I was speaking to another maternal fetal medicine doctor, and he was explaining to us, just sharing a story about a recent some travel he was taking to Mexico to go and perform a surgery in utero to repair the same condition that Christian had. And it was like white noise, cold sweat, like the ground just opened up out from underneath me, because up until that point, I was able to find peace in knowing that nothing could have been done. And in that moment, this man is telling me on this field with balloons and face painters all around me that he's getting ready to go and travel and save another child. And I just, there was something so, again, we talk about trauma, how it's not linear, right? Mm-hmm. And something can come out of the blue and smack you upside the face out of nowhere when you think you're doing fine. And that really set me back, because I had to really put that in a cubby, because there was no point in perseverating on that. That was not my story. It was not going to change our outcome. But that was heavy for us, for sure.
And that's powerful to not go down. I mean, to allow yourself to not go down that rabbit hole. That is extremely powerful, because it is very, very hard. It is very hard not to start to ruminate and cycle around the what ifs and, oh my gosh, well, what if and what if and what if. But that's the thing. That isn't your story, right? Those what ifs aren't our story, and our story is our story. And I believe that by allowing yourself to not go down those what if rabbit holes, that shows a sign of healing, of progress toward, and walking forward and owning your story. We don't want our stories, and we can't control what they are. And if we fight it, instead of owning it, we stay stuck in the muck.
Yeah.
Right. Yep.
I think too, with that, like, to piggyback off of what Brooke is saying, I mean, if you're listening and you've just experienced severe loss, whether it's a child or a family member or something, it's totally normal to have those thoughts.
Yes.
It's totally normal to have those thoughts. So there's no need to feel guilt or something like that to have those thoughts. But then it's also normal to choose to just not entertain a thought that, I mean, again, if that's what you choose to do, that's totally fine. But there is a choice that you have to just look at it in a different way, right? The perspective in a lot of trauma and a lot of grief situations is important. It's important to know that you have that power. And
right. And Lindsay, this was 5 years later.
Yeah, this isn't
as well.
Yeah.
I mean, and again, there is no timeline on this, grief and trauma recovery. And, again, 5 years later, for Lindsay, where she was able to, compartmentalize that specific instance and not let her, ruminate and let it, really drag you into an abyss, really.
Right. Absolutely. That is a perfect way to say it. Because had I been more fragile, had it been in the early hours and early days, it's really easy to project and to latch on to things. And, what I did learn, though, is I am a firm believer of going right through it. And I have met a lot of families that disassociate after trauma because it's too much. It's too much. So there's that fine line between spending time in the space that you need to spend time in so you can go through it. Let yourself have the thoughts, feel the things, and then come out on the other side. And that is one thing that I'm just so thankful that my husband and I have been able to do, because we've met so many families where the marriages didn't work out. We have an older son. He could have been completely cast aside because I was only focused on the screen, which that's a whole nother, having to explain death too.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and,
we had an episode about
too,
that.
It is really important also to remember that for some families and for some couples and, just people in general that, excuse me, unfortunately, it's not an easy cut and dry. I think Mel and I were talking about this, and her and I are examples of, I mean, there's just this shit that drags on and
Yes.
on, and you can't grasp it. In that episode with Mel, she was talking about up until, they figured out what was going on, and all of the legal stuff was over. And I know that, the legal stuff for us hasn't even been over for a year yet.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, literally not even over, for a year. It'll be a year here actually the appellate hearing was the first week of November of 2024. So that's when it started. And then we didn't even get an answer until January. So we were hanging out with that, subconsciously.
9 years later.
And then it was 9 years later.
Yeah.
And there's no opportunity there's never real full closure. There's not, because you've got someone missing that shouldn't be missing, or, you've been through this traumatic event, and you carry it with you. But man, when there is just shit still dangling over your head, I have no idea what it would have been like to have just, and there have been many times where I've thought, if that just literally would have been an accident, if Logan would have literally died from an accident and not from the crash that was preventable.
Right.
What could that journey look like otherwise? And of course I can't spend time in that because I don't know. That's not what it was. But there is, there are so many people out there that, they exist on basically, I think, one end of or the other. They don't have that continued trauma on top of it. I can't even begin to fathom the people who know that it's coming, who know that their children are sick and they know it's coming. You can just sit there and go, all right, mine happened within a second. I never got a chance to say goodbye. I know what that's like. And I can't even imagine what it's like to spend day to day, today, knowing it's coming. And I have no idea what it's like to have lost and, it not carry forth so much extra bullshit. Like, the extra stuff that just kept pushing us down, Jordan and myself, further and further with every single instance. And that's a whole traumatic journey in and of itself.
Yeah.
On top of everything else.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We talked about this too a little bit, Lindsay, on the phone last week when we were talking about having you on the show, where it's like grief is the same for everyone who's experiencing it through loss, but the emotions that accompany it are what make it different, right? So, for example, and this is not because we were talking about, like, I don't want to compare, but it's impossible not to compare because the situations are different. And if you can notice that situations are different, that by nature, it's comparable. The difference is that you can have compassion along with the comparison because you understand overlaps. Like, for example, you are like the Venn diagram of Brooke and I, right? Where I don't know what it's like to lose a child, but I know what it's like to have a kid where you're like, we might lose this. Like, I might lose a child, but I've never lost a child. Brooke's lost a child, but didn't have to experience it during the mixed emotions of the elation of having a birth, and you're like, we have a kid, and then it's gone. Like, see what I'm saying? So the grief is the same. I went through something traumatic, so did you, and so did Brooke. It's still grief. Yours came with loss, mine didn't. But then we look at yours. It's like, you didn't get to know what your child was like. You didn't know the personality for Christian. You maybe in a later life you'll understand it, but Brooke did get to do that. And does that? And then when people start saying, "Well, that's harder, that's easier," no, that's all of that is bullshit. It's hard all around, but for different reasons.
Yep.
And what we need to do is figure out where we are the same, which is we are not alone. It feels like you are because it's such a lonely place when people don't immediately in your family don't understand. We had a lot of support, and bless everyone who brought us food and who watched our dogs while we were in the hospital and all this other stuff. But after all the kind of the water settles, if it even does, it feels like it's just you and your spouse in the ocean, just
absolutely,
Yes.
Yes.
And in Mel's case,
Absolutely.
it was just her and her kid. Like it's but
Right.
but then you start making these connections with people who understand heavy
Yeah.
trauma, and you go, oh, okay, you're just on a different boat, literally, right? You're not figuratively, but we're not. We're all in the ocean together, and we can get through this together. And I think that's what needs to be highlighted. It's okay to compare, but it's more important to have compassion in the comparison, because it's still
I agree
grief.
completely. We heard, I mean, I remember going to a support group meeting early on, which in and of itself took so much effort because it just felt so ridiculous to me to gather around a table full of strangers.
What
and
specifically was the support group? Was it like
it
a
was
general
for
or
bereaved parents? Yeah. So it was a group that my doctors had shared with me. And this woman was amazing. She'd been running it for years after the loss of her daughter. So I immediately changed my attitude upon arriving because, you know, who am I? I'm no different than all these other people who are here. But one of the things that struck me so much in that first meeting was this woman who was 9 years out or something was coming. She was there with her husband, and she made mention of relationships that had changed or were lost as a result of what they had gone through. And I remember thinking, right, because we're in the thick of the casseroles, we're in the thick of the care and the calls, and I'm thinking, well, thank God, you know, that will never happen to us. Joke is on me, right? Because the casseroles stop coming. The people that are your family, right? Your friends who are family. I don't even, I may have their phone number still. I mean, people will drop off because they're tired of it. And they honestly get tired of playing the long game. And that's what trauma is. It's the long game. It doesn't go away. And people frankly get tired of it. I had one person tell me that she felt like her pregnancy was overshadowed because she got pregnant right when Christian died, and that I stole the attention.
That's nice.
Wonderful. Real nice.
You know,
I will trade places with you in a minute.
No shit. Well, I mean, I was mentioning a couple episodes ago that my dad had mentioned, I don't know if you heard this when you were listening, but my dad had mentioned, you know, that he was jealous of settlement money that was coming in, you know, from this guy that was on the clock when he killed Logan. And it's like, wait a minute, what child would you sacrifice? Seriously.
Right.
What the fuck do people think they're saying? But you know, the best thing that we were ever told, I think the best thing we were ever told, and this was early on, but it was about relationships. And now it's, you know, after we've done so much work and done trauma work and residential trauma and everything, it really is able to be cemented with me, and I'm at peace with it. But is that in these situations, and probably life in general, you've got your sprinters and you've got your marathoners. And your sprinters are the ones, you know, like for us, there were people in the hospital like coming in and out so much to the point that there had to be a code word. Like the hospital, if people would call, and ask if we were there, if they would show up, they would tell them no unless they had a specific code word. But there were people coming in and out all the time. The meal train, the dine to drive, or what are those called? I forget what they're called. Dine to drive and dine. I don't remember.
Are you talking about like meal trains and stuff?
Well, yeah, but then like a restaurant will give proceeds.
Oh.
Yeah, dine. Yeah, okay. I don't remember what they're called, but you know, there's so much in that immediate, and then the shock as those people start to drop off. Because we were the same way. We were sitting in the hospital and all of our family was there and we had all these people, and we're like, thank God we're not those that everybody talks about, that, you know, they just don't have the support. Thank God they've got, and then within a year, there was like barely anything.
And
absolutely,
for the record, this is not to shame anybody who has been there to support you. Like, well, except for the lady who said that your attention was taken away, because screw that.
Except for her.
I'm just saying, like, it's understandable why, and that's why it's hard, right? It's hard because it doesn't go away. It never goes away, right? You're in the fire forever, right? You just get to learn how to become a phoenix. But the problem is the people around you they're like, ooh, we were a little chilly and now we're going to sit next to you, not in the fire, but we're just outside this fire, like a little marshmallows. But then all of a sudden it's a little too hot. And so we need to step back, and that's okay. Like, it's understandable. It's understandable that people go, man, this is hard for me to be next to you because it's so much harder for you and I don't know what to do. Sometimes that's okay. For those of you who were our sprinters and who helped, great. Thank you very much. For those of you who have been marathoners, also thank you very much. But then the rest of the people who just went away because they couldn't handle it, because they didn't know how to deal with our problems as our friends. Well, now we know, right? You showed your true colors. And on the other hand, other people show up in your life that you never expected, that you never would have thought, that you never would have known. And you're like, wow, where the heck did you, I mean, I haven't talked to you since high school. And here you are, like, offering me help, like, so for each one of those, you kind of, and like, I've made friends with Brooke now. I mean, this started off as like, I'm just going to help you and we're going to produce your podcast and this is my business. But now, regardless of where this podcast ends up or how we do this, Brooke's going to be my friend forever because I know, right? I feel like I've gotten to know her family, and same with a lot of the people that we've had on as guests. And so you start meeting these incredible people who inspire you, who are years or months ahead of you as far as like the process of grief, and you start being inspired and you start understanding, oh, there's I mean, I remember when we were in the NICU, we were in the middle of it and we still weren't sure that Rio was going to make it okay. Like, surgery had gone fine, but there was still stuff that was happening. And we were coming into the NICU. You have to do your check-in and all this stuff because it's super like safe. And there was a lady there with like a 4-year-old, and she was just kind of hanging out at the front desk. And I'm like, oh, how are you guys doing? She's like, good. We were in here once.
Aww.
And this is my daughter. And she it was interesting. She had the same thing that Rio had coincidentally. And I mean, we were like, oh, are we ever going to get the hell out of here? Like, this feels like we might still lose the baby. Like, we don't know. And this mom's like, hey, I never knew her name. I haven't seen her since. But she goes, it's going to be okay. Like, you're going to be okay. I know it seems like you will never be out of here, and I know every day feels like a year, but there will be a day where you're walking out of the door with your baby and you'll be okay. And I get emotional just thinking about it because I remember thinking, wow, like, I've never see her again. It's like a little angel that just got popped in and said, it's going to be okay.
And you clung to that like
so
with
hard.
Every fiber of your being, because it's 1 ounce of
I woke up this morning knowing that we were going to talk about this, because the difference between you and me, Lindsay, is that it was a chance. Call it luck, call it whatever, fate, destiny, God, whatever. But the difference between you and me was it was just the different pipe. And I woke up this morning, and Rio she woke up crying, and that instinct of a parent that you're like, oh, I have to wake up, and then immediately, like within a half second of that thought, I'm like, you idiot, shut the fuck up, because you're sitting on blessings, man. You're sitting on answers that were or answers to prayers that you were a year ago. Literally, she was in the NICU a year ago. You were praying for this morning, and like, how could I be upset about my baby crying where you would trade me places for that event any day? And so the perspective that people give you that have gone through similar or adjacent experiences to help you get that perspective and that attitude change of gratitude for what is there is massive. And so it helps to meet those people. For every one of those that dropped off, people like you, like Brooke, do show up in people's lives. And I think that's important to also acknowledge. Sorry for my rant there, but
no, it's beautiful what you just said. And with regard to perspective, my husband and I, after Christian passed, we did have another son. And we named him Chance because we got another chance, and it has completely changed who we are as parents. So with regard to, my February 24th self, everything that I thought mattered does not matter.
Yeah. Make
the mess, cry all the tears, take the days off of school so we can be together and have mental health days. Like, I am grateful for the perspective that I have as such a young parent, to be able to raise my kids with a different mindset, because I don't know that it would have been that way had I been more naive and everything had gone right.
The unfortunate beauty that comes out of experiences like this is that we understand we can carpe diem,
Right.
better. We live in the moment, right? We prioritize better. We get out of that rut of the everyday and the mundane and, gotta, do this and do this. And we're like, wait, slow down, because life can be gone in an instant, and, spend the time with your kids, travel. I mean, we try to travel as much as we can now with our kids because we don't know what's going to happen. And it's about creating those memories. And I mean, the girls aren't happy because it means Christmas is lighter. We don't give things. We want to travel and have experiences instead. But that's the stuff that we take with us. And, but it, unfortunately for us, for me, for both of us, really, that came out of the perspective of losing a child and knowing that not every day is guaranteed. So,
and the key for people who are listening, who may be going through something really tough right now, I mean, this episode might be referred to somebody that Lindsay, who might need to hear this. So if that's you listening to this now, is the key that from what Brooke just said is that that's something that you chose, right? You weren't forced to look at it differently and become a better parent. Right. And you could have easily gone the other way, which a lot of people do. And again, that's how people grieve. That's again, we can't judge. Some people dive into alcohol. Some people's marriages crumble like immediately right after. Some people's, they go into coping mechanisms that are not healthy. And again, totally normal and severely understandable. No judgment. However, the fact that you're sitting here talking about this the way you are, Lindsay and Brooke, both of you, when you saying this gratitude, that's still a choice that you made. Nobody forced you to go to that point either, and you chose that. And I know it seems dark, and it's if you just are going through it, you're thinking, wow, 9 years from now, there's no way I'm going to be able to talk about this like these two women are. Yeah, you can, and if you choose to, you will. But it's such a hard thing to face and to even hear someone say that, because again, both of you were in that same place of, I just lost my son.
Very, very, I mean, I didn't realize yours was 2016 as well.
Literally
so,
during the same time. October 9 years ago, October 20th, this is where we're recording this, October 20th, 9 years ago, 2016, both of you had lost a son.
Recently.
Isn't that
and you're in Tampa,
fresh?
Right? You're in Tampa?
Yeah.
So you were within miles of each other, which means that if you stop right now, within miles of you, there's someone going through that, And so you're not alone. You're not. And it's okay.
No. And to your point, thank you for saying that, because I remember feeling, we talked about grief being all relative, and everybody is allowed to feel what they feel because of their own story. And I was put in touch with a woman shortly after Christian passed, whose son died of cancer when he was 11. And she called, and I said, I feel so awful even needing your advice, because I know my son was an infant and you had 11 years. And she said, Lindsay, I feel the same in reverse. She said, I can't fathom the torture of the what if that you have to carry your whole life. She said, I have 11 years of memories, of photos. I know what his favorite things are. I know what he liked to do and play and eat. And she said, you'll never know. You have to live a lifetime of what ifs and missed moments. And she gave me that permission to understand that everybody's grief is relative. And like you, with a medically complex child, though your child didn't pass, you still carry grief, because what you've gone through is traumatic. You thought you were going to, and there's never really a day where we talk about being naive, like that can't happen to us. Well, now it has to all three of us in some capacity. And so the idea that something terrible can't happen again, that we don't have that anymore.
Right.
Once it lands at your door, and that's one of the facets of being a mother now to these two boys. I constantly worry about their safety. There's another level that comes with
Yeah.
Because now you're not invincible. Now you know
No
you're not
way.
invincible.
Yeah. Mortality
Right.
is,
Yep.
is
I
in
mean,
your
and
face.
that's, yeah. And,
Well,
you know, I remember talking to someone after this and always being like, God willing, this is the one and done in my life. But the truth of the matter is that I'm still going to face loss. I'm still going to face hardship. You know, I just know now that it's a possibility. Whereas before, that wasn't even on the radar ever. You know, you live your life, your kids grow up, they do what they're going to do. You know, you pass away. You know, that was life, right? And now it's kind of like this, always maybe walking around with just a little tiny bit of holding your breath. You know, because, and that's not to say that it takes you prisoner, because you could walk around in a constant state of like freeze and be like, oh fuck, what's coming? You know, what's coming? And you can't live your life like that. You can't. And you're still human and still have those, you know, tiny little fears of what could happen, you know?
yeah. With that too, I mean, I think one of the thoughts that we had that, and I don't know if this is insensitive to say, but I remember having this thought and it helped me a ton, was because this happened twice. One, up in my life, even before Ria was born, there's been a series of traumatic events. I mean, my family was going to get murdered. So we had to flee from Colombia to get here and endure culture change and all that stuff. And all these I had heart surgery when I was 6, which was intense. So I remember as we were leaving, because with us, instead of them giving us the baby, we never got to hold the baby. They just said, Dad, you have to come with us. So all this, like, and I've talked about this on the show before, but it was one of those where this isn't what's supposed to happen. Like in the movies and every birth story that every parent has ever shared with me up to this, when you're pregnant, they're like, this is how it went for us. And this is the part where they give you the baby and we go to our room and we wait a couple days and we go home. None of that shit happens. So as I'm walking over, I remember thinking to myself, every time that something happened to me up to this point in my life, I remember you don't want to have this overwhelming thought, but there was a little thought in the back of your head that was, why me? Like, why is this happening to me? And then as I'm walking to this auxiliary room as a father for the first time, I remember thinking, oh, that's why me. It's so that I could freaking hold it together when this is happening, because my daughter, who I met 30 seconds ago, needs me and I could handle this, right? Yet, as it's going and we're in the hospital, I'm still thinking, why? Like, why this? Like, of course it would. And then another thought hit me. Why not me?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Why would it not happen to me? Who the heck do I think I am?
Yeah.
That I'm so freaking special. Like this couldn't happen to me. Dude, wake up. This is life and you need to get it together, because they need grieve is still important. And we have grieved just like you two have. But also that thought of like, it could never happen to me. Yes, it can.
Mm-hmm.
Not to be cynical, but yes, it absolutely can. And if it does, I'm so sorry. You're not alone and it's going to be okay. As crazy as it sounds, I promise you. And if it doesn't, well, yippee. Congratulations. You didn't get to do it. So I love that you mentioned that. You're like, we never thought it would happen. Yes. Every parent that's gone through what you two have gone through has had the same exact thought. You hear about this on podcasts. You hear about this in movies. You hear about this from friends of friends. It can happen to you, and it's okay. And the second piece of advice through that same mom also said to us, you're going to want to be super extra careful with her. Like, you're going to want to like put her in bubble wrap. Don't let that get carried away, because they need to still live their life. Your family still needs to live. You still need to live your life, and don't live in fear as much as you're going to want to, and as hard as it's going to be not to.
Yeah.
You have to let them be alive.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh,
that's what you fought for.
Yeah. And it's so hard, because like her relationship with food is always going to be special because of her esophagus and stuff. And so we can't give her like too big chunks of food sometimes, especially early on. Later in life she can, but like right now. So every time we give her like too big of a piece, there's like a panic in my head. But then in my head I'm like, no, like we have to just do this, because
you still have to let
she
them
has
live.
to live.
You have to let them live.
Yeah, I can't hold her forever, and I can't bubble wrap her to take her. You know, she still has to go to school, and she still has to get sick, and she still has to, whatever, scrape her knee or get heartbroken or whatever.
Hey,
and
remind
that's
me of
scary.
all of this here in the next year and a half when Mallory starts driving.
Yeah, I will.
Oof.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know.
How fun.
I know. I mean, I believe she's going to, she's going to be responsible in the car, but it's not her that I specifically worry about. It's all the other assholes on the road with their
Right.
phones that scares the shit out of me. So
Yeah.
that's gonna be a
But she
rough
went through it
time.
too, and she'll understand to respect the weapon that she's driving
I know.
amongst weapons.
I know.
Wow. Can I ask you one more thing, and then we can maybe wrap it up, as we're past the hour, and I'm sorry to keep you. But is there any advice? And I've asked this for both Mel and Michelle, so I wanted to ask you: the February 24th, Lindsay, what would you tell her, knowing what you know now after these 9 long years? What would you say?
Oh my gosh. I would say that um, I mentioned it earlier, just play the long game, right? Because there is I can do hard things. I have done hard things. I've had 9 pregnancies and I have 2
Wow.
living
Oh.
children.
Wow.
Wow.
So I have known every kind of loss that you can imagine. My first son was in the NICU, like your daughter. I survived that. I know the fear. When you think you can't, what I would say, it's not about what you can bench, it's about what you can carry, right? Because we get in these moments where we can put up and we can hold on and we're really strong, but what can you carry long term? I can carry it. And that's what I would tell my February 24th self. You can do more than you think you can.
It's not about what you can bench, it's about what you can carry. Holy moly.
Mm-hmm.
I need a t-shirt. I need a
I know.
t-shirt.
I know.
I need a t-shirt.
I've heard quite a few things that I'm been going t-shirt. I'm actually hopeful, or actually I would like for you to also share, not just with us, but with our listeners, more about your foundation.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. So we, going back to my desire to just figure out a way to be his mother, we established a foundation in his memory. And really our purpose is just to be a light, to be, to provide a meaningful, either to be a liaison in someone's world. So if someone is in need, can we meet that need? Somehow, can we change and impact the lives of others through the provision of unconditional kindness? So we've been contacted by other families who have gone through child loss. We've been contacted by people who have been impacted by house fires, you name it, being unhoused, need for food. We send things globally to orphanages and schools. So realistically, our focus is to just spread kindness, and that has always been my source of joy. I find healing in being able to serve, and it's so funny because I've been connected with so many people like Mel who,
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. So when I was in the school system, I'm retired now, but prior to retiring, I was in the school system and I was working with a woman who was the secretary at the time, and she was telling me this horrible story about a woman that she knew personally who had just lost her husband, and she found out she was pregnant on the morning of his funeral. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, right? We're standing over the filing cabinet and I'm just listening to this thinking, gosh, that poor lady. And she was talking about this family friend, right? So then fast forward to I'm now home, newly home from the hospital, and my doctors and nurses had taken charge to send meals for a week. So every day, this same young man would show up to my door. Well, what I didn't realize is it was Melanie's foundation that they had reached out to send meals to me. And that is how Mel and I connected all those years ago. So, just and so just watching other people around us in the community. I've known people who've started nonprofits in the name of fetal research and that sort of thing. I think for us, we just really wanted to be used however, whenever we could within our community, and it makes me feel good.
That's
Keep
amazing.
the good going. That's what we say. Keep the good going.
That is amazing. And how can people reach you? I know
Yeah,
Andreas
so-
has a link in the
she
show
does.
notes, but
Yeah, so all over socials, we have a website, so very easy.
very
Okay.
good.
Yeah, I got it tagged down below. I also
I know
have a
you do.
link with VATER syndrome. If people, it's from the Cleveland Clinic .org. It kind of shows if people want to learn more about what that is. They can click on the link there as well. So that's that's that. There it is.
Thank
Also,
you for doing what you do, by the way. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome back anytime if you want to
Yes.
discuss specific, because there's so much. I mean, we're just getting people's stories, but I think what we've talked about is kind of maybe having some episodes at some point in the future, maybe soon, maybe a few months from now, but whatever. But where we can have a specific question and it's more of a panel or a set of questions that people. So, for example, like, hey, how did you deal with it immediately after? At what point did you feel like you could accept what was happening? Right, those questions that we could ask you, and it'd be great to have these powerful women, and it could be other parents, or it could be other spouses that lost or whatever, but we can kind of ask everybody in the panel and kind of share thoughts on a specific area of grief and trauma that can maybe be helpful for people who are listening as well.
Well, what's great too about, something like, Mel and you and myself is that we've been able to embrace life after loss in such a way that Melanie got remarried, and you and I have had other children after having lost a child. And I think that there is very powerful conversation in sharing with people that it doesn't have to stop your life. You can have that loss and move forward and have love, have, another child, have another husband. It can still coexist, and there's so much healing in allowing that space in your life. There's something that I've told people all along, because many people have questioned us having another baby after having lost a child. I'm like, I would never give up my experience with Logan. And yes, by bringing another child into the world for us after having lost one sets us up for potential. And I know what Logan brought into that life.
Yeah.
I know the joy and the love. And, for us, it's better to, it's kind of like having, for me, the very first time I lost a pet, I was like, I'm never doing this again. I'm never doing it again. And I didn't until after Logan passed away, and we did. And it's very hard, but I will continue to have dogs for the rest of my life. Now, I'm not going to continue to have children for the rest of my life. That shop is officially closed.
Yeah, it gets a little harder as we get older.
A little, just a tiny bit. But I mean, I think that would be a very unique conversation to have, is, even if it's a Q&A, how, how did you guys, decide, and what were the conversations, and, how did you get past? What did it dig deep into your grief? Just all of these things. And it's very good, because I'm sure that there are people out there who are struggling with the same type of thoughts and questions and guilt, and oh, I want to have another baby. I feel so guilty though. I'm
oh, absolutely.
What does that mean for the child that I lost? And
right.
So
yeah, I mean, even the fear they must have had as you were pregnant.
It was, I can't even.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Tough. Wow.
Having to go back into the OR because, we had another C-section.
Yeah, because the last time you were there.
Right.
Yeah.
The last time I was in that room was, my whole world fell apart. So kind of walking through what that looks like.
Yeah. Well, and I hear you. I haven't, my story doesn't contain child loss in that manner. And the only panic attack I've ever had in my life was when I was in labor with Mila. And I had a C-section too, and they had to put me out because I had full on panic attack, couldn't breathe, Wow. Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Well, as people are listening to this, just know, sorry for the bad news. Trauma doesn't necessarily go away. It just it's kind of like hunger. You're not feeling it right
changes.
now.
It morphs.
But later, when you go to that thing, or you read that book, or you hear that voice, whatever, it comes back. And the things is that you get strong enough to carry it, not bench it, as we have learned. Wow, I love that, by the way. Thank you so much. Lindsay, thank you so much for being here. This
Thank
has been
you guys so much.
emotionally wow. So I know I was really nervous. This is like, I haven't been nervous for any other episodes except for this one because I knew where this was going and there was like a lot of overlap. So wow, I'm sorry to make it so much about me and stuff because I talked a lot.
No, but you know what you did? You made me feel less alone because you get it, and I appreciate that.
I understand. So well, again, welcome back any other time. If you guys enjoy the episode, please give us a follow, subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, hit that plus sign so that you can get more information about the show. You can see when episodes drop. We also do have a newsletter. The newsletter, all it does is tell you when a new episode drops. We won't try to talk about any news or updates that are going to come from the podcast itself. So make sure you sign up for that. Follow us on social media and all that stuff. Go check out, please check out that link, the Christian Michael Hernandez .org. Go check it out so you can learn more about the foundation and how maybe if you want to help or if you need support, go check that out. Tune in for another episode, and we were going to have a Q&A episode, so submit those to traumauncensored.com, or you can say it hello@traumauncensored.com is where you can submit your questions, and we can put that in for a panel in the future. But with that, bye everybody.
Bye.